Hey guys, how's it going? Kripparrian here. Today I want to review some of the statistics given to me by Hearthstone. Hearthstone is one of my partners. They basically run the software that I use when I draft a deck in Arena that gives me the scores on screen. I'm sure you guys have seen it countless times on stream and on my YouTube videos. Well, when they're running this process, they get some statistics, which is why they have these scores. So a lot of people have tier lists out there, but Hearthstone actually gathers statistics and has some general statistical backing to these numbers. And it's pretty interesting to review this stuff because it's one thing for me to tell you guys, this card is good, this card is pretty good, this card is probably better than the other card. But it's another thing completely different to have the numbers behind it and to have, the ranges of, how strong these cards really are in a more objective form. So today they've given me some statistics to go over kind of what has gone down since Karazhan has been released. They've given me the top 5 cards in the game from the Karazhan expansion, objectively in terms of win rates in Arena, and 2 very interesting ones that are maybe a little bit overhyped. And recently, before I get into those cards, so you guys can understand the picture of what's going on in Arena these days, they posted an article on Reddit that had the strength of each of the classes. This is a question that you guys often bring to me. Well, here it is. This is the objective answer to this question. Now, obviously some people might specialize in one particular class. Like, for instance, I disagree with Druid. I think I'm probably a much better Druid player than the average Druid player, because I would probably rank Druid like number 3, maybe number 4 in terms of power level right now, which is pretty good in my opinion. Not quite number 7 as the list would indicate, but that doesn't mean it's not true. That those are the statistics. The statistics indicate that Druid is actually a pretty poor class. So it's pretty interesting to see this, and it's also, again, important to realize that you might just be really good in some specific classes, but this is what you can expect, and this is what you can expect in terms of your opponents. So when this becomes public knowledge, and in general, this represents people's overall win rates. So you're going to see continuously a crap load of mages in Arena. That's what this means, a crap load of mages. In the article, they mentioned that mages right now are better than the second best class than they have ever been at any time in Hearthstone. And this is after Blizzard's fixes to Arena. So I guess we basically have the definitive proof in. Blizzard's fixes for Arena have not done enough to suppress the ridiculousness of mage decks out there. And they've brought back, some of the tools, some of the lower classes, they certainly have. And it doesn't seem as soul-crushing to get, obliterated by decent mage decks in Arena. It seems like the problem is still there. So Mage is definitely number 1. Then we have Rogue with quite a big margin underneath. And then we have Shaman right below Rogue, very similar to Rogue power level. This one surprises me, but Shaman did get a lot of powerful cards in the Karazhan expansion, which is kind of weird because we kind of figured, at least in terms of constructed balancing, which is the main thing that Blizzard seems to care about, people were already really, really sick of playing against Shamans. So yeah, that's kind of a weird one, but okay. In Arena, Shamans, in my opinion, are not too bad, while Shamans definitely have some super power plays. In general, it doesn't feel too unfair. If you can continuously clear the board on Shaman, as you guys have probably experienced in constructed games, they're generally pretty harmless, so it's not too big of a deal. I don't mind Shaman being number 3 in Arena, at least. And then 4 to 6, we have Warlock, Warrior, and Paladin tied. Paladin has traditionally been the class that's been like right under Mage and Rogue, and now we see it kind of in the middle. So we do see, because Paladin was the one class that had no changes in the last patch, we do see that overall, the decks in Arena are a lot better. If Paladin was a solid number 3 for a long time, had no changes, but they changed a lot of things with the other classes, and the other classes kind of surpassed Paladin and equalized Paladin, kind of in a big way if you really look at the list. That's a pretty big deal. So this tells us basically that Arena decks in general are better than they were before Karazhan, before Blizzard kind of had their list of banned cards that they introduced last week. Then we have Druid. Again, Druid I think is probably better than that, but you guys do know from the past I made videos on how my easiest matchup in Arena was Druid. I think Druid is a class that people don't really play very well. I don't know what it is about my Druid play, and maybe the next few drafts that I do play Druid, I'll analyze my play a little bit better to see if I pick up on a few things that I'm doing that I think most other Druids are not doing against me. But I think there's some hope to Druid, and I think once we get more information on the class, we can probably get get it bumped up at least to the range of number 4 to number 6. And then quite a while down we have Hunter, not much of a surprise there. And then all the way at the bottom, even much further than Hunter, we have Priest. So pretty sad, really. When Karazhan came out, Mage was at the top, Priest was at the bottom, and you know they had put such terrible cards in the game, at least as far as Arena is concerned, that widened those gaps so much so that their aftermarket fix to try to remove the bad cards and balancing out, even trying to fix the problem doesn't really seem to even fix what Karazhan did to damage the game, at least in terms of Arena. So that's pretty sad. And we kind of get a bit of this from the card numbers, so let's get into that. These are the top 5 cards in Arena. So you see Firelands Portal, Maelstrom Portal, Spirit Claws, Kindly Grandmother, and Swashbuckler, and you see their tier scores there. And if you haven't used Hearth Arena before, the tier scores are basically like a pretty good card is like 60 something, maybe 70. If you guys like to go by the Dr. Boom standard, Dr. Boom is like 120 some points. So that's pretty scary. You know, if you look at Firelands Portal, the number 1 card by far released in the Karazhan expansion is a common card for Mage, nonetheless. And it's actually the best common card in the entire game. And they had the previous best common card in the entire game. And it's almost as good as Dr. Boom. So imagine, just imagine this, okay? Hypothetically. Let's say there was an expansion coming up, and this expansion, there was a card exactly like Dr. Boom, but it was common, and it was a Mage card. Don't you think a lot of people might be upset about the fact that this card is being released and completely screwing over Arena? I think they might be. So that's basically why I've been so vocal about this, why I've been so upset about this. Firelands Portal is a clearly obscene card in terms of power levels for Arena, and it's just ridiculous that Mage got it, and the fixes that they had after the fact didn't seem to do enough to mitigate the damage that this card does. Number 2 on the list is Maelstrom Portal. You know, over 100 points, pretty solid board clear, get some spell damage playing Shamans and stuff. Overall, it's a pretty fun card. I think it's a great card to be added to the game. I think Spirit Claws, you know, 95 points, pretty damn good card. Weapons are very powerful, and if you can ramp up your weapon in the mid-game to 3 attack, that's a really big deal. So again, pretty good stuff. I don't mind Shaman being number 3 in Arena because it does seem like a fair class. It really does. We have Kindly Grandmother. So this card is obviously a powerhouse, but in terms of Arena, Hunters are so far behind that just, you know, one decent 2-drop is not really enough to swing the class around. You know, that's why we just can't have ridiculous cards being released from Mages and Rogues constantly. And, you know, you give like Hunters every like, you know, 2 or 3 expansions a decent common card. It doesn't come close to balancing out. It's a problem that Blizzard seems to make worse every expansion. Then we have Swashbuckler for Rogue, but Rogue got hit the hardest from the removal of the cards from the drafting process last week. So while Swashbuckler is obviously a very powerful addition to the Rogue set, I think they lost more than they gained in the sum of Karazhan plus the Arena fixes afterwards. Then we have Fool's Bane, was a very interesting card. People thought the card would be absolutely ridiculous. I kind of thought it'd be pretty ridiculous too. So surprisingly, it's not that ridiculous. Probably because now with a lot of cards being removed from the set, warriors do more consistently get many weapons, and it makes it so you just don't really have enough health to use all of them. And Fool's Bane is certainly one of those weapons that requires a lot of health to fully use. So because of that, I can kind of understand that it is a little bit lackluster, at least compared to our expectations. But 77 points is still extremely solid for a highly boosted class card these days. So not much of a surprise. Warriors do it all right in Arena these days. And the last card on the list, probably one of the most controversial of this expansion, is Prince Malkazar. So Prince Malkazar I thought would be one of the most insane cards in Arena, and while we definitely had a lot of fun experiences playing with the card, I thought in Arena it would basically have some crazy win conditions because Prince Malkazar's effect does not trigger in the draw phase or the mulligan phase. It only triggers after the game actually starts. And that's such a big deal because if you have Prince Malkazar, when you think of legendaries, you think of big minions that are just clunky and giant and whatever, but those are actually pretty good cards in Arena most of the time. So if you have Prince Malkazar in your deck, you don't have to actually draft many big cards. It will manufacture them in your deck. But turns out there's actually quite a lot of just super garbage legendaries, even the big ones, and certainly a lot of small ones that really make the card extremely inconsistent. So much so that from what I can see from the statistics, and again, my opinion is not going to be more valuable than objective statistics from hundreds of thousands of arena games, it seems that Prince Malkazar is actually worse than a 5-mana 5/6. But oh well, I think it's a fun enough of a card that it'll see quite a lot of play regardless. So that's where we're at now. Overall, it's a pretty depressing situation, and now that the numbers are out there, thanks to Hearth Arena and all the researchers who really look into this stuff, it seems like maybe we can present the case out there, and Blizzard can see how their effects how their solutions have actually worked out, and they can maybe see that they're just simply not good enough to really balance Arena. But I'm still happy that they did it. I think it still gives a little bit of balance, and hopefully there's a lot more to come pretty soon. Hope you guys enjoy the stats, and I'll see you guys in a little bit.